Good afternoon, everybody. Well, it is afternoon. I'm here to give the last presentation to take you into lunch.
How long does it take you?
So I'll go at a breakneck speed. No. My name is Juan Noguera. I'm a professor of industrial design at the Rochester Institute of Technology. I come here from a slightly distant world where I deal a lot with physical objects, but the reason why I'm here is I'm very interested in AI as a tool, and we use it in a number of things. And maybe if I can give you anything from this presentation is maybe to have you, spark different thinking in how it might fit into your process and the things that you do. I know there's people here from many different disciplines, but I deal with the things that we use every day, right? The chairs you're sitting in, the phone you're holding, your laptop, all these different objects that we create. And typically it's a fairly linear process and a lot of this will be recognizable to you. Ideation, then conversion thinking, prototyping, testing with users, then going back to the drawing board, et cetera, this design cycle that a lot of us go through. And there's important parts to this process. For example, we teach our students how to think through sketching, right? To keep a sketchbook where you have lots of information about the thing you're trying to solve, and then narrow those ideas down to something useful. But there's a lot of parts in our process, and I'm sure you can think of a lot of parts in your process where there's tedious tasks, right? We were just witnessing that to Anton's presentation. There's like things that we can speed up, things that take money and time, where AI can really fit in our process. Namely, I spent 2 or 3 semesters of my design education learning how to render with markers, right, and things like that. So with the sole purpose of talking to a client and being able to determine things that they like, things that users like, materials, finish, in objects that, building a vehicle, building a tool, are things that take months and millions of dollars to execute. So it's like fairly high stakes to do maybe just a single product. And designers typically spend a lot of time illustrating things to communicate, to the point where we spend weeks sometimes creating CAD models of things that are not even going to be built, just like I said, concept, so that we can produce a realistic rendering for a board meeting where we can sit down and discuss color, material, finish, and details like that. It's a big investment at that point in time for something that's not going to be final art, something that's not going to be produced at that point. There's still a lot to do before it can be produced. And this is where I start thinking of AI more as a collaborator in the process. And generative AI in particular, not as something that's going to create objects for me or design things for me, because it simply cannot comprehend the intricacies of how people interact with things, their understanding of space. It can create objects, maybe beautiful images, but those can be a part of the things we already do and maybe take away from some of that tedium. That's where we have tools like Viscom. And you'll see tools being created, and I'm really happy to now see like Relume is another one. I just added that to my notes, like list of things to try. Tools that are more specific to a specific area of interest are going to be very popular in the next couple of years, and also just components inside the tools you already use that have AI in them. Viscom is a tool created for designers like me, so that I can no longer just rely on text input. Like, I'd like to see a car, right? And I get a bunch of cars that have nothing to do with my own creation, right? I can maybe describe the scene where the car lives, but they have nothing to do with my hand and my ideas. But tools like this allow me to combine the training of a generative design model with my own hand and actually sketch an idea out as a doodle, and then combine that with a text prompt, and then could describe the lighting of the scene, describe the materials of the scene, and actually see an illustration come to life of a quality level that's going to allow me to have that discussion with my client and talk about possibilities, and where I can alter this dozens of times within minutes and actually create a concept board of different things different directions we might go in. This is a doodle I made on a phone, right, of a car. just using like a note-taking tool. And then I can process that into a rendering of a level that's going to allow a discussion with a number of people that might not have design training, might not have an interest in illustration, but now they can see an object that is more relatable, right? Later on in the process, let's say I have a 3D model for something like a lamp. I can now, instead of setting up the lighting and rendering software and spending hours trying to render an image to put that slide deck, I can take my own design, I can describe the scene and materials, and actually create that stainless steel lamp with a specific color of cord, describe the setting that it lives in. Oh, it's a studio backdrop, for example. Here's another thing I can do. I can go into my CAD software and start dropping in some like blocks, right? Just from the like pre-made objects library, and start arranging them, changing their size and aspect ratio. Because I want to describe this like idea that I have for a sofa. It's like a mid-century sofa. There's a chrome frame on it. I can just drop some tubes, lines, blocks in place within a couple of minutes, describe my scene, describe the fabric and the material for it, and actually get a rendering that's getting closer to that idea, right? Realizing this project is still going to take a lot of time, but this can really accelerate that ideation part of the process and just level the playing game for a lot of the stakeholders in the process. It also allows for a great amount of editing, right? I went to the Corning Museum of Glass and got inspired and started sketching some glass objects, for example, like a pitcher. I can take this sketch of a picture, put it into a tool like VisCom, and generate a rough initial rendering. But then I can just keep iterating at this. I can say, this top part, it just really didn't understand my sketch. I can start like by deleting that part, generating it again, right, to refine this idea. I can then change the setting, the materials. I can further iterate on this idea until I get to a state where this is ready to show somebody in the concept board so we can discuss it. Right, within a couple of minutes. I can turn a 2-minute idea into something that's understandable by a wider audience that's not just people that stare at sketchbooks all day like me. Right? It just allows for effective communication and takes away a lot of the tedium of bringing that idea to an understandable level so that we can actually get to the important work of producing the thing, testing it with users. And that's where we invest our time and our money, ultimately. So the more I get into using these tools, the more I try to cheat what they're supposed to do and to push them a little further. For example, this tool that I just told you about, VisCom, will allow me to input any images as input. It can be a sketch, but it could be something else. For example, I'm collaborating with a coach builder out of Pennsylvania that builds custom cars. So here's a scale model that he made of a design he's working on. So I can actually go ahead and take a photo of his clay model, and I can start sketching some details over it, like headlights, taillights, wheels, etc., and then run it through the software to help visualize what that vehicle might end up looking like and help him decide on colors, details. Oh, this line should be more, crisper, we should have this be softer, etc. So things that typically took a lot of producing and then correction and fixing and going back and forth are now decisions that can be made at the start of the process. You can even trick it into doing things like I was having trouble creating a night scene for the vehicle, but then I just decided we should photograph the model at night, right? And get a backlight and then produce a night scene for what the car might look like by describing it. I went ahead and 3D scanned his clay model, so I could clean it up, bring it into CAD, and then model out the car from every angle so that I can get maybe more consistent results. This is as we were perfecting the shape for it, right? So now I can bring that into VisCom and I can render more consistent scenes of the vehicle as he wants to build it, so that, like this is a rendering, setting it up this way to look this photorealistic would take weeks, right? And now it's taken me a day to do. Or I can just use it to, again, think about the lines of the vehicle, but also just things like color, material, and finish. I can iterate on that really quickly by just changing my text prompt with the exact same input. So for me as an educator, what does this mean for my students who are going to go out into the world? it means that they can accelerate their process, basically. So we bring it into the classroom as a way to, instead of having a wall of just loose sketching, now we can have a wall of actual photorealistic ideas, which is mind-boggling to me. Going from a simple color block sketch, right? This is done on a cell phone with like a finger, right? But then we start iterating on that idea, generating, then deleting and adding, generating again, deleting and adding, and describing the scene as we go, and then ultimately end up with something that might be in your mind, but then articulating that and communicating that usually take a lot of time, and now it can be pretty fast. For people that like working with their hands, we do simple foam models, which are it's hard to get taken seriously with an installation foam model at a meeting, right? We usually have to come up with like a more realistic thing so that clients can visualize the product. But now we can actually take a photograph of the foam model, run it through the software, and actually see the materials that work. So it's been a great assistant to try to figure out, is this the right design direction, but also help us push a concept forward. Like my students used to hate doing clay models for anything. It's like a very old school thing. Like, why would you do this? It's the year 2024, right? But now they're becoming popular again in our program because we're actually taking these ideas, for example, for a controller. My student here, Jingye, wanted to do like a cyberpunk style controller. So he created this model. We took a video of it, right? And then took a couple of stills from the video, ran them through a software like this to help him determine what color, material, and finish he wanted to put on his cyberpunk themed controller, which is an idea that's hard to visualize, right? It's hard to visualize a simple model, like a piece of wood cut in a bandsaw with some wire, but it's part of a more complex idea. Then running it through the process to actually think, okay, this is a desk idea. I can iterate on it. I can perfect this rendering through a couple of iterations, take it into something like Photoshop and perfect this concept. Within an hour, I can have this like more intricate pitch of what this is going to look like and show it to a focus group, show it to users, show it to people at a meeting. A very simple piece of clay that took 1 minute to make could represent a complex idea like a sofa, right? Then, I don't know if anybody played with Sculpey when you were a kid, Sculpey clay, like oven-baked clay, but it has really vibrant colors, and it helps separate one object from another so that we can ideate on things like a reading nook for a child's room. And within a few minutes actually see it at work. So this is not going to be something that's customer facing at any point in time, but it's going to just really enrich our process, the internal process for a product. You know, and a product is something that involves a lot of people to construct, and a lot of time and a lot of money. So the richer the conversation can be internally for that process, I think the product's going to be really rich, right? Here's another piece of clay. Representing an idea for lighting. Again, within a minute, it can take us here. Or perhaps we have some wooden dowel that we go into the shop and cut. Like you have inspiration strikes, you go and you build a model for something, you use your hands, you see it in 3D space as you build it. That sort of tactility is important for us as designers. And we then help express a more complex idea. Right, and this is where these tools are sort of taking us in our profession. Sometimes you have just a complex, crazy idea like, I would like to create a cactus lamp. What does that like? That's a crazy thing to say. Like people have a hard time visualizing what that means. Like a cactus lamp. This is one of my students' work. Then she created a model for the cactus lamp and started playing with text prompts for materials and lighting, etc., to actually articulate that idea and show it as she's trying to picture it. This really abstract concept can be something that's actually interesting, and you can get a group of people on board with it and then bring it to fruition, bring it to reality. Your idea might materialize into just a blob of foam that's hard to understand, but then you can move that into the real world by using a combination of tools. This uses like 2 or 3 different tools. It's touch up with Photoshop, generative also to add some context like a lamp or tables, etc. or you already have an object. This is a very simple CAD model that my student 3D printed, but he was just trying to use it as a way to pose his chairs in place and then area on it. He just took a cell phone photo of the two little objects so that he could create a variety of different renderings of what these bucket chairs might be like from there. There's other tools that are popping up that are interesting to me. One of them is called Crea. Crea is also an image generator, but it works live, like as you move things on screen or sketch a line, it'll actually live create an image for you, which is a neat party trick, right? Here's a webcam recording of me. This was generated actually real time. As I was looking at the webcam, I would see a result of me in this like illustration style. So, yes, that's pretty neat. That's a great tech demo. What is it actually for? What am I using it for? This is the latest thing I'm playing with. What happens if instead of using a webcam, I just screen cap my, I think I turned this off, or it died on me. I just screen cap my CAD window. So maybe I'm working on a primitive shape for a handbag. So I can rotate it around, just seeing this endless flow of handbag ideas to inspire my process and to help drive that process forward. And this is where I see these tools as an ideation partner, as a way to take some of the tedium away and to just help me like potentialize my ideas, help me generate more ideas, put more in the table every time I meet with a client, so that our results is going to be better, still taking advantage of all the tools and knowledge that designers have, and also all the user testing that you inevitably will do with your products. Great. So that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Sorry, what was that second tool?
The second tool is called Crea.
Crea.
Yes.
Does it?
Sorry.
Does it work in so web design, right? So does it work with flats?
It does, actually. If you describe like a 2D, like if I want an interface for this, I would like to see a cell phone app, or like to see a website, and you actually move objects around it. Like on the left side of the frame, you work on that area, you can drag in like a rectangle, and that'll understand, okay, this is a button, and it'll output a button in right that position, right? So you can play visually with objects on one side, have a text description that describes the scene, and see the output live. So you can keep tweaking it until you get a result that's good. Oh, this is interesting. I might capture this one, put it in a concept board somewhere, and just keep playing with it. Yeah. Yes.
Give you like, give you suggestions of actual materials you have to work with it.
No, this is completely driven by like me as a designer. I have to be the one who's actively asking for things, which also I think gives you more ownership over the process and allows you to drive it. If I want to see a scene where I have a lamp and it's going to be a bamboo lamp, it's going to be in this type of room, I have to be the one who drives that forward. So I'm not necessarily getting a stream of things that I don't control. Yeah. Which is like a different way to think about generative also. Yeah, I guess designers are always worried about, okay, I need to have ownership over this process, and I think legally also that's still the gray area, right? If I use this tool in my process, is it really then 100% mine, right? Even if I'm actually actively inputting the lines with my sketch, right, of this, and I think that's still something that we are very interested in looking at from a legal standpoint of view, intellectual property point of view as well. I think I had a question also on this side.
I guess my question was, do you feel like there's a certain level of specificity with the design that's compromised when, because it's such a small scale, right? If it's a phone or if it's a curse, I feel like I would imagine that you can get really caught up into really small details about how each thing is designed. And do you feel like the AI imaging ever compromises the specificity of that?
It does. Like, there's a lot of constructive details that a generative AI program at this stage of time is not going to be able to resolve, right? So if I have a handbag, there's really intricate hardware that needs to be designed that is just going to be, sometimes it'll look like hardware. Once you like zoom in, they're like, oh, that's nonsense. Like, that can't be built, right? But it does help push other conversations forward, like color combinations. Those are things that are usually a snag with a lot of processes. It takes lots of time to resolve those conversations, but I think it's more effective at that than resolving like technical details of any kind at this point, at least. It's to be seen where like there's like for example, Viscom now has a beta where you can actually turn that 2D object into a 3D object and just output like an STL file. You can 3D print your sketch now within a couple of minutes, which is kind of crazy to think about. But those technical things are just not resolved at all. Yeah.
I think this is really interesting in how you can make it so lifelike with the softwares. I'm curious, like how you're preparing the students or how you think about interacting with non-designers also using these tools, and like how do you do that?
Yeah, my students usually struggle the first time they interact with a client because they have good spatial perception, right? And they're describing things with their hands in the air. And then they interact with people in the real world who want to see more detail to understand. So I think they're finding that part really helpful, where they're going to meet up with their end user and show them something that is more relatable, like more realistic rendering. So I think it's helping bridge that divide. So it's being a good communication tool at this point more than anything else, actually. And again, it's helping us make decisions, but it's not really improving like the way they create form or the amount of good ideas it might have. That's still at this point up to them. Yes.
We're using Viscom and some of these other tools. Like I use ChatGPT and Dolly and some of these great images, and then if I don't like one little thing, like some of them they've got a smudge tool, they've got a selection tool that'll kind of regenerate that and whatever. But a lot of the times, I'm forced to like regenerate sometimes the whole image, and then ruins the je ne sais quoi I liked about it in the beginning. Like with Viscom, does it have pretty good like I don't like make the arms different or does subtle change?
Yes, you can iterate on just parts of the image. Like I would either, let's say I don't like this, I can actually just delete this entire part of the image, and it knows that I'm going to recreate these pixels now based on your description. Like you can also just select an area. Like I like the car, but I don't like the wheels. I'll choose the wheels and have describe a new wheel, and it'll understand the rest of the context and just try to work on the wheels, for example. So it is created in a way that helps you iterate on stuff.
Is that like a leaders?
Yes, it kind of works like Photoshop, and you can just it'll take whatever inputs on the screen plus text and create a new layer on top with more information. So the files can get a little bit out of control. You have like tons of different generations. You can go back in time and see what you did before as well. And they have also a nice workspace integration that helps you just see like a tree of progression, so you can actually see your project over time develop, even work within a group of people as well. Well, thank you very much.